Hello. If you're listening to this, I need you to understand something right from the start. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. It'll sound like desert legend, like stories told around campfires to scare tourists, but every word is true. And if you've ever hiked in the Superstition Mountains east of Phoenix, if you've ever felt watched on those trails, if you've ever had the overwhelming urge to turn back for no reason you could explain, then you already know something's wrong out there. If this story resonates with you, if something about it feels familiar in a way you can't quite place, please hit that like button and subscribe. Leave a comment if you've had your own experiences in the superstitions, because what I'm sharing isn't just my story. It's a warning. My name is Blake Drayton, and I've been a deputy with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office for 8 years. For the last 4 years, I've worked the Search and Rescue Division, specializing in mountain rescues in the Superstition Wilderness area, roughly 170,000 acres of brutal desert terrain that sits like a fortress about 70 miles east of Phoenix. The superstitions are beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are. Jagged peaks rising from the desert floor, slot canyons carved by flash floods, rock formations that glow red gold in the sunset. It's popular with hikers, rock climbers, and treasure hunters who still believe in the legend of the Lost Dutchman's gold mine, supposedly the richest gold mine in American history, hidden somewhere in these mountains, never found despite over a century of searching. What tourism brochures don't tell you is that the Superstition Mountains kill people. Not occasionally, but regularly. In this relatively small wilderness area, there are an average of 9 to 15 missing persons cases per year. Some are found, usually dead from dehydration, heat, or falls. Others are never found despite weeks of searching by dogs, helicopters, and experienced tracking teams. And some are found in ways that don't make any sense. I learned about the protocols during my first week on mountain patrol. My training officer was a veteran deputy named Frank Ochoa, who'd worked search and rescue in the Superstitions for 18 years. We were reviewing case files from the previous year, 9 disappearances, 4 bodies recovered, 5 still missing when Frank pulled out a separate folder. "These are the rules for the Superstition Wilderness," he said, sliding a laminated card across the desk. "Memorize them. Follow them exactly. Don't question them, don't break them. And for God's sake, don't tell civilians about them." I read the card. Rule 1. All search operations must conclude by sunset. No exceptions. Rule 2. If you find human remains that are separated from the body, severed, not decomposed, mark the location, but do not collect. Report immediately to SAR Command. Rule 3. Do not follow trail markers that are not on official maps. Report GPS coordinates and move away from the area. Rule 4. If you encounter rock cars arranged in patterns of 7, do not disturb them. Mark location and withdraw. Rule 5. Missing persons reported in Weaver's Needle area after 67 are not pursued until dawn. Inform family of standard overnight protocol. Rule 6. If search dogs refuse to enter an area, do not force them. That area is considered no-go for the remainder of the operation. Rule 7. Apache Junction PD maintains a list of experienced hikers who are not to be searched for if reported missing. This list is classified. I looked up at Frank. What is this? Some of these protocols directly contradict standard SAR procedures. I know. Rule 1. We never call off searches at sunset. Golden hours for finding survivors are the first, 24 to 72 hours. Stopping operations overnight could mean the difference between life and death. I know. In Rule 7, we have a list of people we're not supposed to search for. That can't be legal. Frank leaned back in his chair, studying me. Cole, how much do you know about the Superstition Mountains? The real history, not the tourist version. Lost Dutchman mine, Apache legends. Lots of people die out there. The Apache called these mountains the Mountains of the Thunder God. They believed certain areas were cursed, forbidden. Before the gold rush brought white prospectors, the Apache avoided large sections of the Superstitions completely. He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. This is from 1931. Adolph Ruth, a treasure hunter, looking for the lost Dutchman. They found his skull 6 months after he disappeared. Just his skull, drilled with 2 bullet holes. His body was found 2 years later, miles away from the skull with no bullet wounds. Someone shot him and moved the body. That's one theory, except his body had been lying in the desert for 2 years, exposed to sun, animals, elements, but his flesh was still intact, not decomposed, not mummified, just preserved, like he died a week ago instead of 2 years. Frank swiped to another photo. 1952, James Cravey, another treasure hunter, decapitated. Head found 500 yay from the body. Medical examiner said the head had been removed with surgical precision. No tool marks, no saw marks, just separated at the spine like someone had unscrewed it. Jesus. 1976. Charles Massey, an experienced desert hiker. He went missing on the Peralta Trail. 3 weeks later, he was found sitting against a rock, his hands in his lap. The autopsy showed he had died 24 hours after going missing. Yet, he had sat there for 3 weeks in 43 degrees heat. His bones and skin should have been gone. Instead, he appeared to have sat down to rest and never got up again. There was no decay. This was unbelievable. Frank put his phone in his pocket. I could show you 24 more examples like this. People who vanish under circumstances forensic experts can't explain. People found separately, body parts miles apart, no predator tracks, and no logical explanation for what happened. There are other missing persons, too, who haven't been found despite extensive searches in areas that aren't even that large. And the rules exist because deputies who broke them got hurt or worse. He stood up, walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. 1989, Deputy Marcus Webb continued a search after dark against orders. Violated Rule 1. They found his patrol vehicle the next morning, engine running, all 4 doors open. His duty belt was on the hood. His weapon was on the ground. All rounds fired into the air. Marcus was never found. Maybe he got disoriented. Heat exhaustion, dehydration at night in October when the temperature was 65 degrees and he fired all 15 rounds straight up. Come on, Cole. You know that's not what happened. Then what did happen? I don't know, but I know the rules exist for reasons we might not understand. And I know that deputies who follow them come home at the end of their shifts. Deputies who don't. He turned back to face me. Well, you won't be the first to find out. That conversation was 4 years ago. I memorized the rules. I followed them exactly. And for 4 years, I conducted search and rescue operations in the Superstitions without any major incidents. Found hikers who'd gotten lost. Rescued climbers who'd fallen. Recovered bodies from people who'd succumbed to the heat. Standard work. Tragic but comprehensible until 3 months ago when everything changed. The call came in at 5:47 p.m. on a Thursday in September. A woman named Lauren Hartley, 34, experienced hiker, had failed to return from a day hike on the Peralta Trail. Her husband reported her missing when she didn't show up for dinner. She'd left that morning at 6:20 a.m., planning a 12-mile loop that should have taken 6 hours. I was the responding deputy. I drove to the Peralta trailhead, met the husband, a man named David Hartley, clearly distraught, insisting we start searching immediately. She knows these trails, he kept saying. She's hiked them 100 times. Something's wrong. We need to find her before dark. I checked the time. 6:13 p. Sunset would be at 7:42 p.m. Mr. Hartley, I'm organizing a search team right now. We'll have dogs, additional deputies, and volunteers starting at the trailhead within 30 minutes. 30 minutes? She's been missing for 12 hours. Every minute counts. He was right. Of course, every minute did count. Standard S protocol would have me starting immediately, working through the night if necessary. But I looked at Lauren Hartley's planned route on the map, and my stomach sank. Her loop included Weaver's Needle, a distinctive rock spire that was the supposed location of the lost Dutchman mine, and it was after 68 Sen 1 Rule 5, missing persons reported in Weaver's Needle area after 68 Sen 1 are not pursued until dawn. Inform family of standard overnight protocol. Mr. Hartley, I need to ask, did your wife mention planning to explore around Weaver's Needle? That was the whole point of the hike. She wanted to photograph it at sunset. Why? I pulled out my radio, called it into SAR command, explained the situation. Got the response I expected but dreaded. Search is delayed until 0600 hours tomorrow. Inform the family it's standard protocol for that area. Command, we have over an hour of daylight remaining. We could cover a significant ground before dark. Negative, Drayton. Rules are clear. Search commences at dawn. David Hartley heard the exchange. His face went from worried to furious. You're not looking for my wife. There's still daylight. She could be injured. She could need help. Mr. Hartley, I understand your frustration, but we have protocols. Your protocols. My wife is out there. He was screaming now, getting in my face. You're telling me you're going to let her spend the night alone in the desert because of some bureaucratic I wanted to tell him the truth. Wanted to explain that the protocols existed because something happened in that area after dark. The deputies who'd violated Rule 5 had encountered things they couldn't explain. That I was trying to keep everyone, including him, safe. But I couldn't. So I gave him the official line about safety concerns, liability issues, and the fact that Lauren was an experienced hiker who likely had supplies and would shelter until morning. He didn't believe me. He threatened to sue, threatened to go to the media, threatened to search for her himself. Mr. Hartley, if you enter that wilderness area, I'll have to arrest you for interfering with an official search operation. I know that sounds harsh, but those are the rules. Then your rules are going to get my wife killed. He left in his truck, tires spinning gravel. I called it in, made sure patrol units were watching for him in case he tried to access the trails from another direction. Then I sat at the empty trailhead, watching the sun descend toward the Superstition line, feeling like absolute garbage. Because David Hartley was right. I was sitting here while his wife was somewhere in those mountains, possibly injured, possibly dying, and I was doing nothing. At 7:42 p.m., as sun dropped below Weaver's Needle, the desert transformed instantly. The temperature plummeting, shadows lengthening, the mountains taking on a different character. During the day, they looked harsh but navigable. At night, they looked predatory. My radio crackled. Drayton, this is command. Confirm your position. Still at Peralta, trailhead. No sign of the missing person or the husband. Good. Maintain position until relieved at CO 600. And Drayton, if you hear anything unusual tonight, do not investigate. Do not leave your vehicle. Do not enter the trail. Are we clear? Clear. And if David Hartley shows up, detain him by force if necessary. We can't have civilians in those mountains after dark. I spent the night in my patrol vehicle, engine running for the AC, monitoring the radio traffic that was conspicuously minimal, considering we had a missing person case. No check-ins from other units, no updates from SR Command, just silence. At 11:34 p.m. I heard something. A voice, distant but clear, calling from somewhere up the trail. Female, saying one word over and over. Help. I grabbed my flashlight, opened the door. The voice continued, steady rhythm, same inflection each time. Help! 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 My hand was on the radio, ready to call it in when I remembered Command's warning. If you hear anything unusual tonight, do not investigate. I sat back in my vehicle, closed the door, and listened to that voice call for help for 45 minutes before it finally stopped. At dawn, the search team assembled. 12 deputies, 2 dog teams, a helicopter on standby. We spread out along Lauren Hartley's planned route, working our way toward Weaver's Needle as the sun climbed and the temperature rose. We found her at 9014 AME. She was sitting on a flat rock about 300 yards from Weaver's Needle, facing the trail, hands folded in her lap. Her backpack was beside her, contents neatly arranged. Her hiking boots were off, placed side by side in front of the rock, and she was dead. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was that Lauren Hartley had been decapitated. Her head was sitting in her lap, facing forward, expression peaceful. The separation was clean. No jagged tissue, no saw marks, no blood, just a perfect division between her 4th and 5th cervical vertebrae, as if someone had carefully disassembled her at the joint. and she'd been dead for less than an hour. The medical examiner's preliminary assessment conducted on site estimated time of death between 809 a.m., which meant Lauren Hartley had survived the entire night in the mountains, had been alive when that voice called for help at 11:34 p.m., had still been alive at dawn when we'd started our search, and had died or been killed sometime in the 90 minutes before we found her. The crime scene was photographed, documented, and processed according to standard homicide protocols. But there was nothing standard about what we'd found. Lauren Hartley's body showed no signs of struggle, no defensive wounds, no bruising, no indication she'd fought an attacker. Her camping gear was organized, her water bottles still half full, her energy bars unopened, and the decapitation itself defied explanation. The medical examiner, Dr. Patricia Reyes, had worked homicides for 23 years. She'd seen deaths by every method imaginable. But when she examined Lauren's remains at the scene, I watched her professional composure crack. "This isn't possible," she said, studying the separation point with a magnifying glass. "The cervical vertebrae are intact. No fracturing, no crushing, no cushing. It's like," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "it's like someone pulled her head off by unscrewing it, rotated it until the connective tissue separated cleanly at the weakest point." "Could that be done by hand?" I asked. "Absolutely not. The human neck requires approximately 1,000 lb of force to decapitate by pulling, and that would cause massive trauma, torn muscles, fractured vertebrae, displaced tissue. This is clean, surgical. I've never seen anything like it." "What about tools? A wire saw, maybe? Or no tool marks, no abrasions, no indication any implement was used." She stood, pulling off her gloves. "Officially, I'll list cause of death as decapitation by unknown means. But, off the record, Deputy Drayton, this is the third case like this I've examined from the Superstitions. Same clean separation. Same positioning, same peaceful expression, and I have no explanation for any of them. The investigation moved forward with all the bureaucratic machinery that homicides require. Detectives interviewed David Hartley, who had a solid alibi. He'd been at a business dinner with 12 witnesses from 5:10 p.m. until midnight. They examined Lauren's background looking for anyone who might want her dead. Found nothing. She was a teacher, well-liked, no enemies, no suspicious associates. The FBI got involved briefly, thinking it might be a serial killer with a signature method, but they couldn't develop any leads. No forensic evidence, no witnesses, no logical explanation for how someone could have killed Lauren Hartley in broad daylight on a moderately trafficked trail without being seen, without leaving tracks, without leaving any evidence at all. After 6 weeks, the case went cold. Lauren Hartley joined the list of unexplained deaths in the Superstition Mountains, a list that I was learning was much longer than the public knew, but I couldn't let it go because I'd heard that voice at 11:34 p.m. calling for help. And I'd done nothing, had sat in my vehicle following protocols while Lauren Hartley spent her last night alive somewhere in those mountains. I started pulling files, every missing person case in the Superstitions for the past 20 years. Every unusual death, every incident that violated Rule 2, the rule about human remains separated from the body. What I found was a pattern, a clear, undeniable pattern that no one had officially acknowledged. Since 1990, there had been 17 cases of people found decapitated or dismembered in the Superstitions. All had the same clean separation at joints with no tool marks or trauma. All were found positioned deliberately, sitting upright, hands folded, facing specific directions, and all had died within hours of being found, despite sometimes being missing for days. It was as if something was keeping them alive, holding them somewhere and then killing them right before search teams arrived. I compiled my research into a report and requested a meeting with my lieutenant, James Cordova. He'd been with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office for 32 years, the last 15 in SAR operations. If anyone would take this seriously, it would be him. "You've done good work," Cordova said after reading my report. "Thorough documentation, clear pattern recognition, good instincts." "Thank you, sir." "So, what do we do with it?" 17 unsolved cases with identical characteristics. That's significant. We should be coordinating with FBI, bringing in forensic experts, maybe even consulting with. We're going to do nothing. I stared at him. Sir, we're going to file this report in the case folder, mark it as reviewed, and move on to the next call. He handed the document back to me. And you're going to forget you ever compiled this information. Lieutenant, people are dying. If there's a serial killer operating in the Superstitions, it's not a serial killer. Then what is it? Cordova was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like he was deciding how much to tell me. Finally, he stood and closed his office door. How much do you know about the Apache beliefs regarding the Superstition Mountains? Just what's in tourist guides. Thunder God, sacred ground, that kind of thing. The Apache have stories about certain mountains being occupied by guardians, protectors of places that humans aren't meant to enter. These guardians don't kill indiscriminately. They test people, and those who fail the tests. He paused. The Apache have a word for it. Gain. It translates roughly to mountain spirits, but it's more complex than that. The Gain aren't gods or demons. They're more like enforcers of natural law, maintainers of boundaries. You're saying supernatural entities are killing people in the Superstitions. I'm saying there are phenomena in those mountains that we don't understand, and that our protocols, the 7 rules you follow, exist because previous generations of law enforcement learned through terrible experience what happens when you violate certain boundaries. That's insane, is it? You heard a voice calling for help at 11:34 p.m. Lauren Hartley's voice? Probably. You followed protocols and didn't investigate. If you had gone into those mountains, he shook his head. Deputy Webb didn't follow the rules. He went into the mountains after dark, never came back, and he wasn't the only one. So we just accept that people are going to die, that something is hunting in our jurisdiction, and we do nothing. We do what we can within the boundaries we're allowed to operate in. We enforce the rules. We educate hikers. We search during daylight. And we accept that there are places in this world where human authority doesn't reach. I can't accept that. Then you're going to have a short career in search and rescue, Drayton. Drayton. He opened his office door, signaling the meeting was over. Follow the protocols. Trust that they exist for good reasons. And don't go looking for answers you're not equipped to handle. I left his office angry, frustrated, and more determined than ever to understand what was really happening in the Superstitions. If the sheriff's office wouldn't investigate, I'd do it myself. I started with Rule 7. Apache Junction PD maintains a list of experienced hikers who are not to be searched for if reported missing. This list is classified. Apache Junction was the small city directly adjacent to the Superstition Wilderness. Their police department had jurisdiction over the trailheads and the eastern approach to the mountains. If they maintained a classified list of people not to be searched for, someone there would know about it. I called in a favor with a contact at AJPD, a sergeant named Tommy Chen, who I'd worked with on a joint operation 2 years ago. We met at a coffee shop in Apache Junction, far from official channels. The list, Tommy said when I asked about it. Jesus, Drayton, you really want to go down that rabbit hole? I need to understand what we're dealing with. He was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his phone. This doesn't leave this table. If anyone asks, I never showed you this. He opened a document, an Excel spreadsheet with maybe 40 names, dates, and brief notes. I scanned through it quickly. Robert Morrison, 58, gold prospector, missing 2004. Located alive, 2009, refused rescue, added to list. Jennifer Keating, 42, spiritual seeker, missing 2011. Spotted multiple times, refuses contact, added to list. Michael Voss, 67, retired archaeologist, missing 2015. Found alive at abandoned mine, declined extraction, added to list. Where am I looking at? I asked. People who went into the Superstitions and chose not to come back. They're alive. We know they're alive because they've been spotted by hikers, photographed by trail cameras, even contacted by search teams, but they refuse to leave, refuse rescue, refuse all contact with civilization. So we just let them stay out there. We tried forcing extractions in the early cases. It didn't go well. People became violent, had psychological breaks, or in 2 cases died within hours of being removed from the mountains. After enough failures, We changed the policy. If someone's been missing long enough, been spotted alive, and actively refuses help, we add them to the list and stop looking for them. How many people are on that list? 41 currently. Goes back to 1968. Some have been living in those mountains for decades. We have trail cam footage of Morrison, the gold prospector from 3 months ago. He's been out there for 20 years. Doesn't age right. Doesn't match how a 78-year-old man should look. What do you mean, doesn't age right? Tommy swiped to a photo. It showed a man, maybe early 60s, rugged and sun-weathered, staring directly at the camera. The image was dated 3 months ago. That's Morrison, disappeared at 58. Should be 78 now, but he looks maybe 65 tops. And we have footage from 5 years ago where he looks exactly the same. No aging, no deterioration, just frozen. That's not possible. Neither is what happened to Lauren Hartley. Neither is half that happens in those mountains. He put his phone away. The people on that list made a choice, Drayton. Whatever's in the Superstitions offered them something, and they accepted. And once they accept, they're not fully human anymore. They're part of the mountains. Part of whatever system operates out there. What kind of system? I don't know, but I know it's been there longer than we have. Longer than the Apache, maybe. And I know it has rules. The 7 protocols you follow, those are the surface rules. The ones that keep casual hikers and deputies alive. But there are deeper rules. Rules about who's allowed to stay, who's allowed to know, who's allowed to leave. And the people who break those deeper rules end up like Lauren Hartley. Exactly. She was an experienced hiker, knew the mountains well. Probably knew too much. Started seeing patterns, noticing things, maybe even had contact with people on the list. Tommy leaned forward. That's the real reason we don't pursue people after 6,000 p.m. in the Weber's Needle area. Not because it's dangerous for search teams, though it is, but because that's when they come out, the people on the list. And if you encounter them after dark, they'll try to recruit you, convince you to stay. And most people aren't strong enough to refuse. What happens if you refuse? Then they let you leave. But if you don't refuse, if you accept what they're offering, you can never leave. You become part of whatever's out there, and the sheriff's office adds your name to the list. I sat back, processing everything Tommy had told me. It sounded insane, like conspiracy theory nonsense mixed with campfire stories. But it aligned perfectly with the evidence I'd compiled, with the protocols I'd been following, with the patterns I'd noticed. I need to talk to one of them, I said. Someone on the list, someone who can explain what's really happening. Bad idea, Tommy, if there's a chance of understanding this, of preventing more deaths like Lauren Hartley's. I have to try. And if you end up on the list yourself, if you accept their offer and can't come back, then at least I'll know the truth. He studied me for a long moment. Then he pulled out a piece of paper, wrote down GPS coordinates. There's a woman named Susan Delgado. She's been in the mountains for 8 years. Used to be a ranger. Actually, worked for Forest Service before she disappeared. She's been spotted regularly near the Black Mesa area, always at dawn or dusk. If you're going to talk to anyone, talk to her. She still remembers what it's like to be human. Still has empathy. Why hasn't she been forced out? Because she knows the deep rules, knows how to exist out there without violating boundaries, and because he hesitated. Because whatever's in those mountains trusts her. She's become a kind of ambassador, mediator between the mountain spirits and people who stumble into places they shouldn't be. How do I find her? Go to those coordinates at dawn. Bring no weapons. Bring no electronics except a basic flashlight. And Drayton, if she offers you anything, if she tries to convince you to stay, refuse immediately. Don't think about it. Don't consider it. Just refuse and leave, because once you start considering their offer, you're already halfway lost. I drove to the Black Mesa trailhead 3 days later, arriving at 5:15 a.m. While the sky was still dark, I left my service weapon in my vehicle as Tommy had instructed. Brought only a flashlight, water, and the coordinates he'd given me. The hike took 40 minutes, climbing through desert terrain as the sky gradually lightened. At 6:02 a.m., I reached the coordinates, a small clearing surrounded by saguaro cacti with a view of Weaver's Needle in the distance. Susan Delgado was waiting for me. She was in her late 50s, lean and weathered, wearing clothes that looked like they'd been made from desert materials, leather and canvas, and plant fiber. Her hair was long and gray, tied back in a practical braid, and her eyes were different, not in color or shape, but in the way they focused, like she was seeing more than just the physical world in front of her. "Duty Drayton," she said. Her voice was calm, measured, with an odd echo to it. "Tommy said you might come. Said you were asking dangerous questions. I need to understand what's happening in these mountains. People are dying and the sheriff's office is covering it up." "They're not covering it up. They're maintaining boundaries. There's a difference." She sat on a flat rock, gestured for me to sit across from her. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. What are you? What are the people on that list? What's killing hikers? And why do you choose to stay here?" Susan smiled, a sad, knowing expression. "Those are big questions, and I'm not sure you're ready for the answers, but I'll try to explain." She looked out at the mountains, glowing pink in the early morning light. These mountains are older than human civilization, older than the Apache, older than the tribes that came before them, and they're inhabited not by anything you'd recognize as living, but by something that exists in the spaces between life and death. Tommy called them mountain spirits. The Apache called them gone. I call them guardians. Guardians of what? Of a threshold, a boundary between your world and something else. The superstitions are thin places, locations where the barrier between realities is permeable, and the guardians maintain that boundary. Make sure nothing crosses that shouldn't. Make sure humans don't venture too deep into the other side. And the people on the list, we're the ones who crossed the boundary and chose to stay. We're not quite human anymore, but we're not quite other either. We exist between and we serve a purpose. We help maintain the balance. Guide lost hikers away from dangerous areas, enforce the deep rules, and occasionally she paused. Occasionally we enforce consequences for those who violate the most sacred boundaries. My stomach turned cold. Lauren Hartley, you killed her. Not me personally, but yes. She was judged and found guilty of severe boundary violations. She'd been coming to the mountains for years, taking things she shouldn't take, documenting places she shouldn't document, sharing information about the threshold with other seekers. She was warned multiple times. She refused to stop. So you executed her. The guardians did. I was just the witness, the one who positioned her body so you'd find it. So her family would have closure. Susan met my eyes. That's my role now. I exist between your world and theirs, making sure the boundary violations are handled in ways that minimize harm to everyone involved. You called decapitation minimizing harm compared to what the guardians would do without intervention. Yes, Lauren Hartley died instantly, painlessly. No fear, no suffering, and her body was left where it could be found. That's mercy, deputy. Real mercy. Because the alternative, she shook her head, the alternative is people who disappear forever, who cross fully into the other side and can never return, who become part of the mountains in ways their families would never understand. I stood up, anger, overwhelming caution. This is insane. You're describing murder, execution without trial, and you're acting like it's justified. I'm describing maintenance of boundaries that keep both worlds safe. Rules that existed long before badges and laws and human justice systems. Susan stood as well. You want to stop the deaths? Follow the protocols. Educate hikers. Keep them out of sensitive areas. That's the best you can do from your side of the boundary. And if I refuse to accept that, if I report everything you've told me, then you'll be fired or transferred. Because the people above you, the ones who created those 7 rules, they already know what I'm telling you. They've known for decades. and they've made the calculated decision that maintaining the boundary is more important than explaining it to every deputy who gets curious. She started walking away back toward the deeper wilderness. Then she paused and looked back. "You're a good deputy, Drayton. You care about people. You want to save everyone. But you can't. Some places aren't meant for humans. Some thresholds aren't meant to be crossed. The sooner you accept that, the longer you'll survive in this job." She disappeared into the brush, leaving me alone in the clearing as the sun climbed higher. I stood there for a long time, processing everything she told me. Then I hiked back to my vehicle and drove to the station. I had a choice to make: report what I learned and likely lose my job, or accept that some mysteries don't have satisfying answers. Some deaths can't be prevented. Some boundaries must be maintained, even at terrible cost. I was still wrestling with that choice when my radio crackled with a new call. Another missing person in the Superstition Wilderness reported after 6,000. Superstition Wilderness reported after 6:40 m in the Weaver's Needle area, and this time it was someone I knew. The missing person was Franco Choa, my original training officer, the man who'd given me the 7 rules 4 years ago. 18 years of experience in the Superstitions. If anyone knew how to survive those mountains, it was Frank. His wife had called it in at 6:47 p.m. Frank had gone for what he called a closure hike, his last patrol before retiring next month. He planned a solo trip up the Dutchman Trail, starting at 200 p.m., expecting to be back by 6. When he didn't return by 6:30, his wife started calling. By 6:45, she'd reported him missing. I was still in my vehicle outside the station when the call came through dispatch. My hands were shaking as I picked up the radio. "Dispatch, this is Drayton. I'm responding to the OA case. ETA to Dutchman Trailhead is 20 minutes. Copy that, Drayton. Be advised, subject's last known location was near Weaver's Needle area. Rules apply. Rules apply," which meant no search until dawn, which meant Frank would spend the night out there alone in the area where Lauren Hartley had died, where 17 people had been decapitated over 30 years, where something enforced boundaries that I was only beginning to understand. I drove to the trailhead anyway. Frank's wife, Teresa, was already there. Pacing near her car, phone pressed to her ear. When she saw my patrol vehicle, she ran over. "Cole, thank God. You have to find him. Frank knows these mountains better than anyone. If he's not back, something's wrong. Teresa, I need you to tell me exactly what Frank was doing today. His route, his intentions, anything unusual he mentioned. He said it was his goodbye hike. He wanted to visit places that had been significant during his career. He mentioned." She paused, checking her phone. "He texted me at 4:30. Said he was at Weaver's Needle taking photos. That was the last I heard from him." Weaver's Needle. Of course it was Weaver's Needle. Did Frank ever talk to you about the protocols for that area? About why we don't search there after dark? He said it was policy, something about dangerous terrain and liability. Why? What's really going on out there, Cole? I wanted to tell her everything about the Guardians and the boundary violations and the people on the list. About Susan Delgado and what happened to those who crossed too far into the wrong territory. About the fact that her husband might have finally learned something he wasn't supposed to know. But I couldn't. So I gave her the official response. "We'll start searching at first light. Frank has survival gear, water, experience. He'll be fine overnight. You're not even going to look for him. It's only 7 dozens. You have flashlights, equipment." "Teresa, I'm sorry. The protocols. The protocols. The protocols. That's my husband out there." She grabbed my arm, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Cole. You know Frank. You know he taught you everything. If something happened to him, if he's hurt or trapped, every minute matters." She was right. Every minute did matter. And Frank had given me those 7 rules specifically to keep deputies safe. He'd followed them meticulously for 18 years. If he was in trouble now, it was because something had gone catastrophically wrong, or because he'd chosen to break the rules. I made a decision that I knew would probably end my career. Get in your car and go home. If anyone asks, I told you to leave. Understand? What are you going to do? Something incredibly stupid. I waited until Teresa drove away. Then I grabbed my emergency pack from the trunk, flashlight, first aid kit, rope, radio, and my service weapon. Despite Tommy's warning about bringing no weapons, if I was violating protocols, I might as well violate all of them. At 7:34 p.m., as the last light faded from the sky, I started up the Dutchman Trail. The desert at night is a different world. During the day, it's harsh and exposed. Every rock, every cactus, every danger visible. At night, it's alive with sounds you can't identify and movement you can't track. The beam of my flashlight seemed pathetically inadequate against the vast darkness pressing in from all sides. I hiked for 2 hours, following the trail toward Weaver's Needle, calling Frank's name every few minutes. No response except the occasional rustle of small animals and the distant yips of coyotes. At 9:47 p.m. I found his backpack. It was placed neatly on a flat rock about 50 yards off the main trail. His water bottles were still full, his emergency supplies untouched. His phone was inside, fully charged with one unsent text message in the drafts folder. I'm sorry, Teresa, I understand now. I'm where I'm supposed to be. The same kind of message Lauren Hartley's husband had received. The same message people on the list sent before disappearing forever. Frank hadn't gotten lost, hadn't been attacked. He'd made a choice. Frank, I shouted into the darkness. I know you can hear me. I need to talk to you. My voice echoed off the rock formations and faded into silence. I stood there breathing hard, fighting the urge to run. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to get back to the trailhead, to follow the protocols I'd violated by being here. Then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, approaching from somewhere in the darkness beyond my flashlight beam. You shouldn't be here, Cole. Frank's voice, but wrong, deeper. With that same echo Susan's voice had carried. It's after dark. Rules apply. I spun, sweeping my flashlight across the landscape, caught a glimpse of movement, a figure standing maybe 30 feet away, just at the edge of the light. Frank's silhouette. But something was off about his proportions. His arms hung too loose, his head tilted at a strange angle. Frank, Teresa's worried about you. Your family needs you. Whatever's happening out here, whatever you think you've discovered, you need to come back. I can't come back. Not anymore. He stepped closer and I got a better look at him. His face was Frank's face, but changed. The lines and wrinkles were gone, smoothed away like someone had reset him to a younger version of himself. His eyes reflected my flashlight with a faint red glow. I have crossed the boundary, Cole. Accepted what the Guardians offered. I'm part of the mountains now. What did they offer you? Understanding, purpose, freedom from the fear. That's haunted me for 18 years. He gestured at the darkness around us. I spent nearly 2 decades enforcing rules I didn't understand, maintaining boundaries I couldn't explain, watching people die and telling their families comfortable lies. I was tired, Cole. Tired of the deception. Tired of being on the wrong side of the threshold. So you joined them. Became one of the people on the list. The list is just a bureaucratic acknowledgement of something deeper. We're not missing, we're transformed. We serve as intermediaries between your world and the mountains. We enforce the deep rules. We protect both sides from each other. I remembered Susan's words. We exist between, and occasionally we enforce consequences for those who violate the most sacred boundaries. Lauren Hartley, I said. You were there when she died. You helped the Guardians kill her. I witnessed her judgment. She'd been warned repeatedly, given multiple chances to stop her boundary violations. She refused. The Guardians can't allow someone to continue exposing the threshold to the outside world. The balance must be maintained by murdering people, by protecting reality itself, Frank's voice grew intense. Do you know what happens if the boundary breaks down? If too many people cross over, or if too much of the other side leaks into your world? Collapse. Chaos. The fabric between realities tears and both sides suffer. The Guardians had been maintaining that boundary for millennia. A few deaths every year is the cost of keeping billions safe. And you're okay with that cost? With being the one who decides who lives and dies? I don't decide, the Guardians do. I'm just the witness. The one who makes sure the consequences are carried out cleanly. He took another step forward, but that's not why I stayed to talk to you. I stayed because you're at a crossroads, Cole. You've learned things you weren't supposed to know. You violated the protocols. You've spoken with Susan, and now you're here after dark in the Forbidden Zone. The Guardians are aware of you. They're watching. And you have a choice to make. What choice? Accept or refuse. Stay or leave. Become one of us. Understand the deep rules. Serve a purpose greater than law enforcement. Or return to the surface world. Forget what you've learned. Live the rest of your career enforcing rules you don't understand. But you have to choose now. Tonight, this is your threshold moment. He extended his hand, and I could feel it. A pull like gravity, like magnetism. Part of me wanted to take his hand, wanted to understand completely, wanted to stop living with questions that had no answers. I thought about Lauren Hartley sitting on that rock with her head in her lap. About the 17 other victims whose cases I'd documented. About all the people whose families would never know the truth. About Teresa waiting at home for a husband who'd chosen the mountains over her. No, I said, taking a step back. I refuse. Frank's expression flickered, disappointment mixed with something like relief. Are you sure? This is your only opportunity. The Guardians won't offer again, I'm sure. I'm going back, and I'm going to keep enforcing those rules, even if I don't fully understand them. I'm going to protect people from both sides of your boundary. But I'm going to do it as a deputy, not as I gestured at him. Whatever you've become, then you need to leave. Now, before he stopped, head tilting like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. His expression changed to alarm. Cole, run. The Guardians didn't want me to offer you the choice. They wanted me to bring you across by force. I violated protocol by giving you the option to refuse. There, something moved in the darkness behind him. Something massive shifting between the rock formations. I couldn't see it clearly. My eyes refused to focus on its shape, but I could feel its presence. Ancient, vast, utterly inhuman. Frank turned to face it. I'm sorry. I just wanted to give him a choice. The same choice I had. I ran, crashed through brush, stumbled over rocks, fell and scrambled back up. Behind me, I could hear sounds, not footsteps, something else, like stone grinding against stone, like the mountain itself moving, and Frank's voice calling out words in a language I didn't recognize. My flashlight beam swung wildly as I ran, catching glimpses of things that shouldn't exist, shadows that moved wrong, shapes carved into rock faces that hadn't been there during the day, and figures, dozens of them standing at the edges of my vision, watching me flee. The people on the list, all 41 of them, standing silent, witness to my escape. I don't remember most of the run back to the trailhead. My mind shut down, focused only on following the trail markings, putting distance between myself and whatever had been behind Frank. I fell twice, cut my hands on rocks, twisted my ankle badly, but I kept moving. I reached my patrol vehicle at 1:23 a.m., drew myself inside, locked the doors, and sat there shaking while my heartbeat slowly returned to normal. My radio crackled, static at first, then a voice, female, calm, with a distinctive echo. Deputy Drayton, this is Susan Delgado. Can you hear me? I grabbed the radio. How are you? We're not on the same frequency. Frequencies don't matter in the threshold. I need you to listen carefully. You've been marked now. The Guardians know you. They'll be watching you for the rest of your career. You can never return to the Superstitions after dark. You can never enter the Weaver's Needle area day or night, and you can never tell anyone what you saw tonight. These are the conditions of your survival. Do you understand? What about Frank? Is he Frank violated deep rules by offering you a choice without guardian approval? He's being judged. I don't know what his fate will be, but I know it's beyond your ability to help him. Her voice softened slightly. I'm sorry, Deputy. I know he was your friend, but he made his choice just as you've made yours. Now you both have to live with the consequences. What do I tell his wife, his family? Tell them he's missing, presumed dead. Let's search for 3 days and find nothing. Let them hold a memorial service. It's kinder than the truth. This is insane. I can't just. You will, because the alternative is ending up like Lauren Hartley, or worse, ending up like the people who tried to expose the boundary and were incorporated into the mountains permanently. Frank gave you the rules to protect you. I'm giving you new rules to keep you alive after tonight. Follow them exactly, or the Guardians will claim you the next time you set foot in the Superstitions. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Good. One more thing. The 7 protocols you've been following. They're changing to 9. Command will receive the updates tomorrow morning. Memorize them, teach them, and never ever question why they exist. The radio went dead. I sat in my vehicle until dawn, watching the mountains lighten from black to purple to red gold. At 6:04:01 a.m., the official search for Frank Ochoa began. I joined the teams, followed the protocols, and helped search areas I knew we'd never find him in. After 3 days, the search was called off. Frank Ochoa was declared missing, presumed dead. A memorial service was held 2 weeks later. I attended, stood with his family, and said nothing about what I had seen in the darkness near Weaver's Needle. Because some truths are more dangerous than lies. Some boundaries exist for reasons we'll never fully understand, and some choices, once made, can never be unmade. The new protocols arrived exactly as Susan had predicted. The morning after Frank's disappearance, every deputy in the Search and Rescue Division received an updated laminated card. The 7 rules had become 9. Superstition Wilderness, SAR Protocols. Revised Rule 1. All search operations must conclude by sunset. No exceptions. Rule 2. If you find human remains that are separated from the body, severed, not decomposed, mark the location but do not collect. Report immediately to SAR Command. Rule 3. Do not follow trail markers that are not on official maps. Report GPS coordinates and move away from the area. Rule 4. If you encounter rock cars arranged in patterns of 7, do not disturb them. Mark location and withdraw. Rule 5. Missing persons reported in Weaver's Needle area after 6:08 p.m. are not pursued until dawn. Inform family of standard overnight protocol. Rule 6. If search dogs refuse to enter an area, do not force them. That area is considered no-go for the remainder of the operation. Rule 7. Apache Junction PD maintains a list of experienced hikers who are not to be searched for if reported missing. This list is classified. Rule 8. Deputy Blake Draytonis prohibited from entering Superstition Wilderness after sunset under any circumstances. This restriction is permanent and non-negotiable. Rule 9. If you hear voices calling for help after dark, do not respond, do not investigate, do not leave your vehicle. Report to SAR Command immediately. My name right there in the official protocols. A permanent restriction that would follow me for the rest of my career. When other deputies asked why, Lieutenant Cordova gave the official explanation. Drayton violated night search protocols during a critical operation. The restriction is disciplinary. Some accepted that explanation. Others, like my current partner, a sharp deputy named Rachel Kim, knew there was more to the story. You went after Frank that night, she said 2 weeks after his memorial service. We were doing equipment inventory, far from anyone who might overhear. You violated Rule 1. Went into the Weaver's Needle area after dark. What did you find? Nothing I can talk about, but you found something. And now you're permanently restricted from night operations in the Superstitions. She studied my face. Cole, if there's something we should know about that area, if there's a real danger beyond what the protocols say, we need to know. The protocols exist for good reasons. Follow them exactly. That's all I can tell you. That's not good enough. We're supposed to be a team. Partners don't keep secrets that might affect safety. She was right, of course. In any normal job, withholding information from your partner would be unacceptable. But this wasn't normal, and the things I'd learned weren't mine to share. Rachel, I need you to trust me on this. The 7 rules, 9 rules. Now, they're sufficient. Follow them. Enforce them. Don't question them. That's how you stay safe. And Frank, he followed those rules for 18 years. Where is he now? I had no answer for that. Life went on. I continued working search and rescue, continued responding to calls in the Superstitions, but only during daylight hours. I became the deputy who mysteriously couldn't work night shifts in that area, who always had scheduling conflicts when sunset operations were planned. Some people thought it was cowardice. Others thought I was being punished for something. No one knew the truth except Lieutenant Cordova, and he wasn't talking. Frank's name was added to the missing persons list. After 6 months, he was declared legally dead. Teresa received his death benefits, sold their house, and moved to California to be closer to her sister. Before she left, she came to see me. I know you went after him that night, she said. We were sitting in my patrol vehicle, parked at the Dutchman Trail head, the last place I'd seen Frank alive. I know you violated protocols to search for him. The official story is that you didn't find anything, but I need to know. Did you see him? Did you talk to him? Did he say anything about why he left? I wanted to tell her everything about how Frank had transformed, about the choice he'd made, about the guardians and the boundary and the threshold between worlds. But what good would it do? It would only replace one kind of pain with another. Instead of grieving a husband who died, she'd grieve a husband who'd chosen the mountains over her. I found his backpack, I said. His phone with that unsent message. I searched as long as I could, but I never saw him. I'm sorry, Teresa. I wish I had better answers. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. Thank you for trying. Thank you for breaking the rules for him, even if it cost you. She squeezed my hand. Frank always said you were the best trainee he'd had. Said you cared more about saving people than following procedures. I think that's why he gave you those protocols. He knew you'd need clear boundaries or you'd risk yourself for everyone. After she left, I sat alone in the parking lot, watching the sunset over the Superstitions, wondering if Frank was out there somewhere watching me, wondering if he regretted his choice, wondering if I'd made the right choice by refusing. 6 months after Frank's disappearance, we got a call that changed everything again. A hiker had found something in the Peralta Canyon, the same area where Lauren Hartley had died. Not a body, not remains. Something else? A notebook. It was weathered, sun-leached, the pages brittle with age and exposure, but the writing inside was still legible. And when we traced the notebook to its owner, we discovered it had belonged to James Cravey, the treasure hunter who'd been decapitated in 1952. The one Dr. Reyes had told me about, the case that was 70 years old. The final entry in the notebook was dated the day before Cravey's death. I found it. The Lost Dutchman. Mine is real, but it's not what anyone thinks. It's not a mine at all. It's a threshold, a doorway. The gold is just a lure, a story to draw people to this place. The Apache knew. They tried to keep people away with warnings and curses, but the white prospectors wouldn't listen. The Guardians offered me a choice tonight. Stay and understand, or leave and forget. I'm choosing to stay. I'm tired of the surface world. Tired of the greed and violence and ignorance. Whatever exists beyond this threshold, whatever the Guardians protect, it's more real than anything I've known. If someone finds this notebook, know that I wasn't murdered. I made a choice and I'm at peace with it. James Cravey, February 16, 1952. The notebook was processed as evidence, photographed, and then, like so many other pieces of unexplained evidence from the Superstitions, it disappeared into classified storage. but not before I'd read every page, documented every detail. Because Gravy's story was the same as Frank's story, the same as the 41 people on the list, the same choice offered to anyone who ventured too deep into the threshold areas. Stay or leave, transform or forget. Become something more than human or remain human, and accept that some mysteries would never be solved. I started compiling a comprehensive file. Not to expose the truth. I learned that lesson, but to understand it, to document the patterns, the boundaries, the rules that govern both sides of the threshold. What I discovered was this: the Superstition Mountains weren't unique. They were part of a network. Across the American Southwest, there were dozens of similar locations, places where the boundary between realities was thin, where guardians maintained thresholds, where people disappeared or transformed or chose to stay. The superstitions were just the most active, the most deadly, because they were so accessible, close to Phoenix, easy to reach, heavily trafficked by tourists and treasure hunters who had no idea what they were walking into. And the protocols, not just the 9 rules I followed, but hundreds of similar rules enforced by law enforcement agencies across the region, were all part of the same system, a vast unofficial network of deputies, rangers, and tribal police who knew the truth and worked quietly to maintain boundaries they couldn't publicly acknowledge. I reached out to contacts in other jurisdictions, deputies in New Mexico who enforced strange protocols around Shiprock, rangers in Nevada who had inexplicable rules about certain sections of desert, tribal police on the Navajo Nation who spoke carefully about skinwalkers and forbidden areas, and I found the same patterns everywhere, the same transformations, the same choices, the same quiet acceptance that some places weren't meant for human habitation. We were all part of something bigger than any single agency or jurisdiction. We were the human side of an ancient agreement, maintaining boundaries that predated our laws, our governments, our understanding of reality itself. A year after Frank's disappearance, I was promoted to SAR coordinator for the Superstition Wilderness. It wasn't a promotion I'd wanted, but Lieutenant Cordova insisted. "You understand the area better than anyone else," he said. "You know the rules. You know why they exist, and you know what happens when they're violated. That makes you the best person to train new deputies and enforce protocols." So I became the person Frank had been to me. The one who handed laminated cards to rookies and told them to memorize rules without questioning them. The one who filed reports that went into classified storage and never asked what happened to them. The one who maintained the facade that the Superstition Mountains were just dangerous wilderness, not a threshold to something incomprehensible. But I also became something Frank never was, an advocate for transparency within the system. I pushed for better documentation, for centralized records, for coordination between agencies that dealt with similar phenomena, and slowly over months of bureaucratic persistence, I helped build what became known as the Threshold Protocol Network, an unofficial alliance of law enforcement personnel who shared information about anomalous zones and coordinated responses to boundary violations. It wasn't perfect. We still couldn't tell civilians the truth, still couldn't prevent every death or disappearance, still had to maintain the cover story that these were just dangerous wilderness areas with inexplicably high accident rates. But we saved lives by enforcing protocols, by educating hikers, by quietly redirecting people away from the most dangerous threshold areas. And occasionally, we even managed to extract someone before they crossed the boundary too far, before they were offered the choice Frank had accepted. 2 years after Frank disappeared, I received a message. Not through official channels, through something else. A text from an unknown number arriving at 3017 a.m. "The Guardians appreciate your work maintaining the surface-side boundaries. Your respect for the protocols has not gone unnoticed. Frank wanted you to know he's at peace, he serves willingly, and he's proud of what you've become. SDO and Delgado, still out there, still serving as mediator between worlds. Still checking in on the deputies who'd learned the truth and chosen to stay human." I typed back, "Is there any way to communicate with Frank directly?" The response came immediately. "No, he's crossed too far, changed too much, but he watches sometimes. Stands at the boundary at dawn. You could see him if you looked. But don't look, deputy. Don't give yourself hope that can't be fulfilled. He's gone. Accept it." I didn't respond, just sat in bed staring at my phone, thinking about all the choices that had led me here. The choice to become a deputy. The choice to work search and rescue. The choice to question the protocols. The choice to go after Frank that night. And the choice, the most important choice, to refuse what the Guardians offered. Some days I wondered if I'd made the right decision. If refusing the transformation meant I'd spend the rest of my life as a gatekeeper, maintaining boundaries I'd never fully understand, protecting people from threats they'd never know existed. But then I'd get a call from a family whose lost hiker we'd found alive. Or train a new deputy who'd go on to save lives by following the protocols. Or prevent someone from entering a threshold area at the wrong time. And I'd remember why I'd chosen to stay human. Because the world needed people on this side of the boundary. People who knew the truth but chose to remain grounded in ordinary reality. People who could bridge the gap between the explainable and the inexplicable without losing themselves in the process. It's been 4 years now since Frank disappeared. I'm still a deputy with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, still coordinating search and rescue operations in the Superstition Wilderness, still following the 9 protocols, still teaching them to new deputies, still maintaining the boundaries. The mountains continue to claim lives, 8 to 12 people per year consistent with the historical average. Some are recovered. Some become names on the list. Some are found in ways that defy explanation, and their cases are filed in storage that civilians never access. And sometimes at dawn, when I'm at the Peralta trailhead preparing for the day's operations, I see figures standing on distant ridges, watching, waiting. People who've chosen the mountains over the surface world. People who've become something more than human, or perhaps less than human, or perhaps just different in ways we don't have language to describe. I don't look too closely. Don't try to identify them. Don't wonder if one of them is Frank checking on the deputy he trained, making sure I'm still following the protocols. Because some things are better left unexamined, some mysteries are better left unsolved, and some boundaries are better left uncrossed. My name is Cole Drayton. I'm a deputy with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office in Arizona, and if you're planning to hike in the Superstition Mountains, I need you to understand something. Those mountains are beautiful, historic, and sacred. They're also dangerous in ways that can't be explained in trail guides or safety brochures. Follow the marked trails. Don't hike after dark. Don't investigate unusual rock formations or unmarked paths. And if you hear voices calling for help from areas where no one should be, don't respond. Don't investigate. Turn around and leave. Because some people who go into those mountains never come back. Not because they died, but because they were offered a choice and they chose to stay. And once you make that choice, there's no going back. The Guardians are always watching. The boundaries are always maintained, and the protocols exist for reasons that most people will never understand. But now you know. And knowing means you have a responsibility. Follow the rules, respect the boundaries, and accept that there are places in this world where human authority ends and something older takes over. The mountains remember everyone who enters. The Guardians know everyone who crosses their threshold, and the choice they offer is real. Stay or leave. Transform or forget. Become part of the mountains or return to the surface world. I made my choice. Frank made his, and someday, if you venture deep enough into the superstitions, you might have to make yours. Choose wisely.